The Minni-Lights. Shadows in the City. By Chris Corleone. Rain-slicked streets reflected flickering streetlights like shattered mirrors. The city of St. Petersburg slept uneasily under the cloak of night, unaware of the small, darting shadows that skittered along its alleyways. At first glance, they were nothing more than tricks of the light, tiny blurs slipping between puddles, but those who dared to look closer felt it, a wrongness that set teeth on edge and hearts racing. By the docks, a child ran ahead of his mother, laughing despite the drizzle. But a sudden hush fell over the air. The child slowed, eyes fixed on a shadow that seemed too small, too deliberate to be natural. Then the shadows moved. They weren't alone. Hundreds of them emerged from the darkness, Minni-Lights, creatures no taller than toddlers but far from innocent. Their faces were obscured in the blackness, their eyes glinting like shards of obsidian. They whispered in a language older than the city itself, voices so faint that even the wind seemed to carry them. The child's mother screamed when the figures longed, her cry swallowed by the storm. When the townspeople arrived moments later, only puddles and broken footprints remained. No trace of the child, only a faint shimmer of light danced in the rain where he had vanished, a mocking reminder of the things lurking just beyond the human eye. Something had awakened in St. Petersburg tonight, and no one would be safe. Chapter 1. Eddie, the reckless fighter. The rain hadn't let up all night, but that didn't stop Eddie from patrolling the streets of Pinellas Park. Water dripped from the brim of his hood as he ducked into an alley, fists clenched and boots splashing through puddles. He liked the thrill, the pulse of adrenaline that made his chest pound. Fights, scratches, the rush of proving himself, it was the only way he felt alive. "Think you're tough, huh?" a voice called from the shadows. Eddie grinned and squared his shoulders, ready for another street scuffle. But what stepped out wasn't a rival gang member, not tonight. Tiny shapes, hunched and moving with unnatural speed, emerged from the darkness. They were no taller than children, yet their eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the dim street lights. Their limbs twisted like paper cutouts, jerking in ways that made Eddie's stomach knot. "Creepy little freaks," he muttered, cocking his fists. One lunged. Eddie swung instinctively, his fist connecting with something solid yet strangely pliant. A shriek pierced the alley, sharp enough to make him stumble back. The Minni-Lights skittered away, only to be replaced by two more. Panic crept in, not the kind he knew from street fights, but something deeper, primal. He ran, heart hammering, boots splashing through puddles, breath ragged in the cold air. The Minni-Lights followed, darting like shadows, silent except for the occasional high-pitched screech that made him flinch. By the time he reached the corner of Campbell Park, Eddie realized two things: these things weren't human, and running alone wouldn't be enough. His bravado faltered as he glanced over his shoulder, seeing dozens of glowing eyes tracking him. A sudden crash, a trash can toppling over, made him stumble, and a Minni-Light skittered toward him. Eddie's fist rose reflexively, and at the last second, a dark figure swept in. In a blur, the shadow knocked the creature aside and grabbed Eddie's arm. "Get up," a calm voice commanded. "Now." Eddie looked up into a face he didn't recognize. Tall, silent, unshakable. Black hood soaked through with rain, eyes piercing and unreadable. The Minni-Lights hesitated, then vanished into the shadows as if the figure's presence alone drove them away. Who are you?" Eddie gasped, barely keeping his balance. The figure said nothing, just extended a hand and pulled him to safety. Eddie couldn't shake the feeling that this was no ordinary person. Not human, or at least, not like anyone he'd ever met. And in that moment, the city didn't feel safe anymore. Chapter 2. The Squad Together. Formation of Heroes. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time Eddie was led down the deserted streets by the silent figure. He finally caught a glimpse of the others waiting in the shadows, a girl with sharp eyes and a commanding stance, and a boy whose calm gaze seemed to see right through him. "Eddie," the tall figure said at last, "this city needs more than fists. It needs strategy." Eddie blinked. "Strategy? What do you mean?" "Come meet the others," the figure said. "Time you learned what we do." From the shadows stepped Yvette, her hair slick with rain but her posture unshakable. "Finally," she said, her voice crisp. "We've been waiting on you. You'll need to keep up." She pointed to the boy beside her. "And Narvel, don't make him angry. He's complicated." Eddie sized them up. Narvel was lean, with a quiet confidence that hinted he was used to being in charge. The tall figure, now revealed as Doe, remained silent, watching, assessing. "You're late," Narvel said, almost teasing, but Eddie could see the edge in his tone. Minni-Lights don't wait for anyone. Before Eddie could respond, a shriek split the night. From an abandoned warehouse across the street, dozens of Minni-Lights poured out, their jerky movements almost too fast to follow. The squad tensed instantly. Positions, Yvette barked. She grabbed a pipe, swinging it like a baton, directing movements. Narvel pulled a backpack full of Molotovs, tossing one toward a cluster of the creatures. Flames hissed as the creatures scattered, but more appeared from side alleys, circling the group. Eddie charged forward, fist swinging. His adrenaline surged as he landed a punch, but a Minni-Light twisted in an impossible way and slashed at him. Doe moved like shadow and steel, intercepting the creature midair, his movements fluid, precise, almost inhuman. Stick to the plan, Yvette shouted. Don't go solo. Eddie ignored her, driven by instinct. He dodged, fought, and for the first time, felt the weight of real danger. Narvel smirked, tossing another Molotov, watching the chaos with detached fascination. The battle ended almost as suddenly as it began. The remaining Minni-Lights scattered into the darkness, shrieking and retreating. The squad stood, soaked and breathing hard, but victorious. Not bad for your first night, Doe finally said to Eddie, his voice calm, almost eerily so. Eddie swallowed, still catching his breath. You guys, you do this every night. Yvette shot him a sharp look. Every night, or the city dies. Welcome to the squad, rookie. If you want to survive, you learn fast. And in that moment, Eddie realized this wasn't just about fights or proving toughness. This was war. Chapter 3, Doe, the Silent Protector. Doe moved through the city streets like a shadow, silent and precise. Rain-slicked pavement reflected the occasional flicker of streetlights, but he didn't need much to see. Every corner, every alleyway, every abandoned building whispered secrets of the city, secrets that only he seemed to hear. A shriek echoed from a nearby alley. Without hesitation, Doe darted toward it, his movements fluid, almost unreal. Inside, a small child cowered, backed against a dumpster, trembling. Two Minni-Lights circled her, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Doe's hands were calm, deliberate. With a single motion, he swung a metal pipe, knocking one creature aside. The other leapt at him, but he sidestepped with uncanny timing, using the momentum to send it crashing into a wall. The child gasped, staring at him as if he were not entirely human. You're not like them, she whispered. Doe didn't respond. He simply extended his hand, helping her to her feet. His eyes scanned the streets. There were more shadows moving, more Minni-Lights waiting, watching, hungry. As they moved out of the alley, Doe's mind drifted back. Flashbacks came in fragments. A burning building, voices calling his name, hands pulling him from the flames. He remembered whispers, older than the city itself, telling him he had a purpose, a duty to protect, to fight, to endure. Back in the present, Doe guided the child to safety, but the city itself seemed alive with menace. Every shadow could hide a Minni-Light, every whisper of wind carried a threat. He sensed the creatures adapting, growing smarter, more dangerous. A faint rustle behind him. Doe turned, blade already in hand. A Minni-Light lunged from the shadows, faster than he expected. He caught it midair, tossing it into the side of a dumpster with a metallic clang. Silence returned, but the tension lingered. The child clutched his coat. Are they going to come back? They always do, Doe replied, his voice quiet but firm. You have to keep moving. As he disappeared back into the maze of streets, Doe's thoughts returned to the city's future, the squad, and the war that was only beginning. He was the silent protector, the shadow in the rain, and he would stop at nothing to defend the innocent, even if the city never knew his name. Chapter 4, The Squad Together, Planning the First Strike. The abandoned warehouse smelled of damp wood and rust. The faint drip of water echoed off the walls as the squad gathered around a makeshift table, a broken door propped on crates. Maps, sketches, and notes littered the surface. Yvette paced, her voice sharp and commanding. We can't keep reacting. We need a plan. If the Minni-Lights are growing bolder, they'll hit harder next time. Eddie leaned back against a crate, arms crossed, smirking. Plans are fine, but can we fight first? That's my style. Narvel rolled his eyes, rifling through a backpack filled with flammable liquids and Molotov bottles. You'll get your fight, he muttered, if we survive the night. Doe stood apart from the commotion, silent as always, studying the maps. His fingers traced the paths of the Minni-Lights, noting every pattern, every predictable movement. He didn't speak, but the others felt his presence. Calm, unyielding, almost otherworldly. Yvette shot him a look. Your silence is not helpful. Do, tell me, what do you see? Do pointed to several alleys leading to a derelict building near the edge of town. They're gathering there. Small patrols now, but soon enough, larger groups will emerge. We hit them here, we disrupt their numbers. Eddie whistled. Sounds like a fight. Yvette sighed. It's not just a fight, it's a mission. If we fail, innocent people die. Everyone has a role. Narvel smirked, lighting a Molotov. Then let's make sure they fail first. The squad split duties. Yvette coordinated traps and exit strategies. Eddie volunteered for frontal assaults. Narvel handled incendiary weapons, and Do silently moved through scenarios in his mind, calculating the odds. As they left the warehouse, the night air pressed in, thick with mist. The first patrol spotted glowing eyes in the shadows. Minni-Lights moved in patterns, testing, probing, always watching. The squad struck with precision. Flames hissed as Molotovs splashed, barricades clanged, and the creatures shrieked in unnatural voices. Eddie charged forward, fists flying, while Do intercepted the creatures that slipped past the traps. Yvette barked orders, guiding each member with authority. By the end of the night, several Minni-Lights lay destroyed, smoke curling around the streets, but more had escaped, retreating into the city's labyrinth of alleys. The squad gathered, soaked, exhausted, but triumphant. Eddie grinned, wiping soot from his face. Not bad for a first mission together. Yvette shot him a look, half annoyed, half impressed. Don't get cocky, this city has more monsters than you can punch. Do didn't speak, he just watched the darkness, knowing this was only the beginning, and that the shadows would return, hungrier and deadlier than ever. Chapter 5, Yvette, the voice of reason. Yvette crouched behind the rusted fence at the edge of Campbell Park, rain dripping from her hair, eyes sharp and calculating. While the rest of the squad patrolled the streets, she had slipped away, determined to investigate something she hadn't been able to shake, Narvel's secretive behavior. Her instincts had been right. Small exchanges, late-night whispers near abandoned warehouses, unexplained supplies disappearing, something about Narvel didn't sit right. And tonight, she was going to find out what. Peering through a crack in the warehouse door, Yvette's heart sank. Narvel was there, crouched over a small fire, passing tiny bundles to figures too small, too fast to be human. Minni-Lights. The creature shrieked faintly, reaching greedily for whatever he offered. She swallowed hard. So that's why the attacks are escalating, she muttered under her breath. He's helping them. Her pulse quickened, not from fear of the creatures, but from the betrayal. Narvel had been the squad's strategist, their common chaos, and yet he was feeding the very monsters they were fighting. She crouched lower, carefully moving around crates to get closer, taking mental notes. If Narvel found out she was watching, she'd be dead before she could warn the squad. Her mind raced. How long had he been doing this? How much damage had he caused already? Suddenly, a screech echoed behind her. Yvette spun, dagger in hand, as a Minni-Light emerged from the shadows. She moved with precision, driving the blade into the creature's chest. Its shriek pierced the night as it collapsed, but there were more, always more. Yvette ducked behind a stack of crates, heart pounding. I can't let him see me, she whispered. Every instinct told her to flee, but she needed evidence, needed to understand Narvel's motives. Finally, the Minni-Lights scattered back into the darkness, Narvel's fire flickering as the last shadows disappeared. Yvette exhaled, wet hair clinging to her face. Betrayal burned hotter than any flame she'd ever seen. She retreated into the night, mind already racing. Tomorrow, she would confront the squad. Tomorrow, they would have to face the truth about one of their own. Yvette's voice was firm in her head, echoing her resolve. We can't fail. Not now, not ever. The city comes first. Chapter 6. The squad together. Escalation. The city was quiet, too quiet, as the squad split into patrols for the night. The rain had stopped, leaving mist curling along the streets and sidewalks. Every sound, the drip of water from a broken gutter, the rustle of leaves, felt amplified, like the city itself was holding its breath. Eddie led one patrol through the alleys near the train trestle, fists at the ready, adrenaline high. Do shadowed him silently, movements precise, eyes scanning for danger beyond human perception. Yvette and Narvel covered the opposite side, quietly observing patterns and marking possible Minnie-Light dens on their map. At first, it seemed routine, but then they heard it, a low, gurgling shriek from below the trestle. Shadows twisted unnaturally, crawling along the wooden beams. Ambush, Yvette muttered into her calm, her voice calm but urgent. The Minnie-Lights moved with terrifying speed. What had once been small, almost childlike forms now twisted into grotesque adult shapes. Limbs elongated, eyes glinting, teeth sharper. They leapt from the shadows, surrounding the squad. "Form up," Yvette shouted, positioning the team. Narvel lit a Molotov and threw it at the advancing creatures, flames illuminating their horrifying features. Eddie charged, fist swinging, but even he faltered at the sight of a Minnie-Light snapping its jaw at him, faster than any human could react. Doe moved like a wraith, intercepting creatures with precision and strength that made Eddie's jaw drop. Every strike, every dodge, seemed effortless, almost unnatural. The squad fought back, fire and fists blending into a chaotic ballet of survival. But the Minnie-Lights weren't just attacking, they were adapting. When one of Narvel's traps worked, another slipped around it, anticipating their moves. The city's shadows were alive with monsters, and for the first time, the squad felt outmatched. Eddie dodged a swipe and landed a punch that sent one creature sprawling, but another lunged from above, forcing him to dive into a puddle. Water splashed in his face as he scrambled back to his feet. Yvette barked orders, guiding them through the chaos. "Flank left, Doe, cover Eddie, Narvel, hold the center." Doe barely glanced at her, already in motion, moving faster than the eye could follow. Minnie-Lights collided with him and failed. Again and again, he protected the squad, silent and unstoppable. After what felt like hours, but was only minutes, the creatures began to retreat, slipping back into the mist and shadows from which they had emerged. The squad was battered, soaked, and exhausted, but they had survived. Yvette's voice broke the silence. "This isn't over, they're learning, they're getting stronger." Narvel smirked, tossing another Molotov into a puddle, flames crackling. "Then we'll adapt too, that's what we do." Eddie looked around, breathing hard, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. "Yeah, but damn, they're scary." Doe remained silent, eyes scanning the dark streets. He knew they hadn't seen the worst yet. The Minnie-Lights were evolving, growing smarter, hungrier, and the war for the city had only just begun. Chapter 7, Narvel, the Betrayer. Narvel sat alone in a corner of the warehouse, the flicker of a small fire casting long shadows across his face. His fingers drummed on the crate in front of him, a rhythm that seemed almost meditative. Outside, the city slept uneasily, unaware of the deals that shaped its fate. The Minnie-Lights gathered near him, huddled in their jerky, unnatural movements. He tossed them a small bundle of supplies, scraps of food, tiny vials filled with a glowing liquid, something that made their eyes glimmer unnaturally bright. "You're doing well," Narvel said softly, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "Keep the city distracted, and I'll keep feeding you." One of the creatures chirped in that high-pitched, almost musical language they used. Narvel chuckled, shaking his head. "Not too fast, I like my profits to last." He leaned back, watching them with detached fascination. The moral line he had crossed didn't bother him anymore, it was gone, replaced by ambition and greed. Every Molotov, every fight with the squad, was carefully orchestrated, fueling the chaos he controlled. And yet, part of him felt a twinge. A small, nagging thought that whispered in the back of his mind, what if it all goes wrong? What if they find out? He pushed it aside. Fear was for fools, and Narvel wasn't a fool. He was a survivor, a strategist, and now, a puppeteer. The city's chaos was his ladder, and the Minnie-Lights were the rungs. He stood and paced, considering his next move. The squad was growing stronger, bolder. Eddie's recklessness was turning into skill. Yvette's leadership was sharpening. Doe was something else entirely. A shadow in the night, calm, precise, unrelenting. Narvel smiled to himself. That one would be a problem, but he had a plan. Every betrayal had to be timed just right. One wrong move, and the squad could unravel him, but he was careful. Calculated, untouchable. Yet even as he thought this, he didn't notice the small glimmer of light near the warehouse entrance. Yvette, silent and watchful, documenting everything he was doing. Her eyes burned with fury, the knowledge of his treachery already fueling her next moves. Narvel turned to the Minnie-Lights again, oblivious to the fact that the web he had spun was beginning to tighten around him. Every action, every lie, was leading him closer to a confrontation he could no longer control. And the city, already drenched in shadows, was about to erupt into a war that would leave no one unscathed. Chapter 8. The Squad Together. First Major Battle. The air was thick with fog as the squad approached Booker's Creek. Broken branches and wet leaves snapped under their boots, each sound amplified in the heavy silence of the night. Yvette led the way, her eyes sharp, every sense alert. "They're here," she whispered, spotting movement among the trees. Tiny shadows darted across the mist, shapes familiar and unnatural, the Minni-Lights. Eddie grinned, fists raised. "Time to see what we're made of." Narvel checked his flammable supplies, tossing a Molotov into the creek to light the surrounding area. Flames danced across the water's surface, revealing dozens of Minni-Lights emerging from the fog. But these weren't like the ones they had fought before. They were larger, stronger, and moved with unnatural intelligence. Doe moved forward silently, intercepting a creature mid-leap, his movements fluid and precise. The Minni-Light shrieked, its voice high and inhuman, and collapsed into the creek. Yvette barked orders. "Flank left, cover the back, don't let any slip past." Eddie charged headfirst, fists connecting with grotesque faces, but one creature twisted impossibly and slashed at him. A sharp pain seared his arm, and he stumbled, almost falling. Doe caught him with a firm hand, dragging him behind a fallen tree. "Not reckless this time," Doe said quietly, eyes scanning for more threats. Narvel's fire rained down on clusters of the creatures, burning several, but others circled, testing the squad's defenses. The battle raged like a storm, screeching, flailing, fire, and blood. Eddie's heart pounded, but adrenaline sharpened his focus. Each punch, each swing of his makeshift weapons counted. He began to see patterns, learned the Minni-Light's weaknesses, and fought with a skill he hadn't yet realized he possessed. Yvette moved like a conductor of chaos, directing attacks and defenses with precision. Every command kept the squad coordinated, every decision saving lives. By the time the battle slowed, several Minni-Lights lay destroyed in the mud and flames, their shrieks fading into the mist. But as the squad regrouped, Doe noticed movement in the shadows. More were coming, 20 or so, slipping silently through the fog. Eddie looked around, chest heaving. "We did it, right? We got most of them." Yvette's gaze was hard. "Most, yes, but they're learning, they're evolving. This isn't over." Doe's eyes scanned the horizon. "It's only beginning." Narvel, a small smirk on his face despite the chaos, lit another Molotov and whispered to himself, "Soon, the city will bow, and they won't even know why." And as the fog settled over Booker's Creek, the squad realized that this was the first of many battles, and that the Minni-Lights were no longer the small, manageable threats they had once been. The war for the city had truly begun. Chapter 9. Eddie, bravery tested. The mist hung low over the empty streets of St. Petersburg as Eddie moved alone, fists clenched and eyes scanning every shadow. Yvette had warned him, "Stay sharp, follow the plan," but he couldn't resist the pull of a solo hunt. The thrill of facing the Minni-Lights alone, testing himself, was too strong. He followed the faint footprints he had spotted near the creek, splashing through puddles and ducking behind walls. The adrenaline was intoxicating, pumping through his veins. Then he heard it, a faint, high-pitched squeal from an alley to his right. Eddie crept closer, heart hammering. There, illuminated by a flickering streetlight, was a single Minni-Light, smaller than the ones from the last battle, but faster and more cunning. "Finally a fight I can handle," Eddie muttered, stepping forward. The creature darted forward, moving too quickly for Eddie's eyes at first. He swung, missed, stumbled, and nearly fell. The Minni-Light leapt onto a dumpster, watching him, its eyes glinting with intelligence. This wasn't just a monster, it was calculating, almost mocking. Eddie's bravado faltered for the first time. He realized this wasn't about proving he was tough. This was about survival. He circled, searching for an opening. Then he remembered what Doe had done in the last battle. Calm, precise, controlled. Eddie inhaled, slowing his heartbeat, focusing. He watched the creature's patterns, predicted its movement, and finally struck. His fist connected, but the Minni-Light twisted midair, clawing at him. Pain shot through his side, and he fell hard, gasping. The creature advanced, and for a moment, Eddie thought it was over. But then, a shadow swooped in. Doe, silent and unstoppable, intercepting the Minnie-Light with a flick of his arm. The creature shrieked, collapsed, and disappeared into the mist. Eddie struggled to his feet, staring at Doe. I didn't. I almost. You almost got yourself killed, Doe said quietly, pulling him back from the alley. Bravery isn't running at every fight. It's knowing when to fight, and when to survive. Eddie's chest heaved, but he nodded, understanding dawning. The city was bigger than him, stronger than him. Survival meant more than fists. Doe led him back to the main streets, where the fog was beginning to thin. Eddie looked up at him, a mixture of awe and determination. Next time, I won't be reckless. I'll learn. Doe didn't answer, but his calm presence said more than words ever could. The Minnie-Lights were still out there, still evolving, still hunting. But Eddie had learned something vital tonight. Courage alone wasn't enough.